Brilliant. So good morning, everybody. I'm Sheena Patel, I'm the Awards Director, and thank you for joining today's HSJ Awards virtual feedback session for the Freedom to Speak Up Organisation of the Year, partnered by National Guardian's Office. So the awards were just under 2 weeks away. They were just 2 weeks. They just took place 2 weeks ago, rather. Hopefully you did have a chance to watch the show. It is still available on demand on our virtual platform for another few more weeks. So if you did want to watch back your particular category or the whole ceremony, you can do so by logging back onto the virtual platform Swapcard. But I'm pleased to say we have Russell Parkinson here from National Guardian's Office to sort of lead this session. So I'll pass over to Russell. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you, Sheena, and thank all of you as well. Look, I appreciate it's been a particularly tough year, and when it comes to doing something like doing awards entries, you've always got to go that extra mile. Sometimes it can feel a bit like you want to hide your light under a bushel, but what I would say is just brilliant entries. And the reason we do this is both to recognise what individual organisations, what individuals do, what the network does, but also it's a really good opportunity for us to find out what's going on, to hear about those stories and to promote them, because genuinely we believe what you do is absolutely making a difference. So thank you so much for that. And what I would say is absolutely, but I think this is about the third year we've done this. This year the entries were brilliant. They've always been consistently good, and I would absolutely encourage you and encourage you to encourage others to take part, because as I say, this is about the stories we hear and the examples that we get from this. What I would say about this year is, whilst all the entries are consistently good, the goalposts are ever changing, ever shifting. And what I will go through is, when we go through the slide pack, I've got some kind of examples of what felt particularly persuasive to the judging panel this year. And I think for me that reflects where we are in the journey with freedom to speak up. I know some of you guys have been around since more or less the beginning, and you'll know how the landscape has changed. And so what we were looking at as judges has changed as well. So Laura, I wonder if we can have the first slide, please. And okay, so I'll cover some of the key themes and some of the things, as I say, which felt particularly persuasive this year. We'll have a quick look at the winning entry and the highly commended entry, just to bring out some of those things that perhaps explained why it was just that those entries were just that notch above everybody else's, and then really welcome the opportunity for Q&A. I know our comms team will get in touch with you, all of you anyway, and we really want to exploit and explore some of the examples of good practice you brought into your entries, and make sure that the networks and further afield hear about that. So that's the entry, so that's format. So if we can get the next slide, please. I'll canter through some of the things, as I say, which seem to make the difference to the judging panel this year, and also, as I say, probably reflects where things are changing and where we're particularly shining the spotlight on at the moment. The first one is about senior leadership. I think for us, the best entries this year were very persuasive, that they had people at the top who were absolutely both backing what Guardians and what was happening around speaking up, but actually in a number of ways managed to give the persuasive case that they were living the values as well. So that's something I would say we were absolutely looking for. And it's always an interesting dynamic. And I suppose it's part of the weird and wonderful world of speaking up and of being a freedom to speak up Guardian. We really want to champion what you do in your organisation, but equally we need that persuasive case that your leadership are behind you as well. So the leader's response isn't over to you, Guardian, you're in charge, whilst we want to be able to see that there is that independence and that trust there. There's a balance to be struck with. Some of the senior leaders in this year were very persuasive and were able to show, actually, we know that you've got it. The second point I'd raise is about you as guardians, those of you who are guardians in the call and were involved in the entries. The best entries we saw this year gave us examples, gave us evidence that as guardians, you're leaders too. And what we were looking for is how you as guardians were able to lead within your organisation, not just your network of champions or ambassadors or other local arrangements, but you were able to lead the cause for speaking up within your organisation, within the network where you could, and across the system where we could as well. And that's another point I'll make over some of the entries this year that seem to put things that little bit ahead. Saw some brilliant examples of people who are leading as guardians and also leading as individuals and professions. And Tina, I can see you on the call, and I don't want to make you blush particularly, but you were a great example of that. And I will always remember the fact that you were asked, how did being a doctor influence you as a guardian? And your response was, actually, being a guardian's made me a better doctor. And there is something about being able to demonstrate as guardians and those involved in your network, even your leadership as well, were able to kind of absorb this and use this as something to demonstrate leadership that will absolutely transform the system. This year, I know the panel was particularly looking at vulnerable groups, and in particular, particularly with all the activity about Black Lives Matter and where some of the panel judges had particular interests, there were questions about what did you do during COVID? What have you done in particular for BME staff? I think that again was influential, but equally what we were looking at were vulnerable groups, not just in terms of protected characteristics, but also those who were disconnected from their organisation, for instance. So again, another persuasive example was the London Ambulance Trust entry, which was all able to give that case that people working in that organisation are spread across a wide geography. They are isolated, and gave us some very good examples of where those elements of vulnerability were taken into account and some things that the organisation did. So again, brilliant examples of that. I think that's something the judging panel will always look at. Demonstrating the impact on individuals is always a moving and important thing to do, and again, that's something that helped persuade the panel around some of the really great aspects of all the entries. Annie, I'll give you a shout out here. There were some other as somebody who was able to do that, and also you as well, Zoe. I think you had some videos in there which were kind of making a difference in some of the other entries as well. So I think there is something when you're making an entry for this, if you can demonstrate both that I've got senior leaders who can walk the talk, if you can bring somebody metaphorically in the room who's able to describe the journey they've had with speaking up, how you and your organisation have supported them and what it's made to them, that's really persuasive. The next point I'd make is about looking for engagement outside your own organisations and into different sectors, I'd say professional groups, all of those things about where the system as a whole is morphing to. I think this is something we're beginning to shine a spotlight on, and something that increasingly we'll be looking at in the future. It's brilliant and it's hard enough job to make a change within your own organisations. But this is why the goalposts are being pushed that bit further. What we're looking for is that engagement outside of your organisation. It could be to your student groups, it could be across the system. And John, your entry was probably the strongest example of that, because we know you've done work to spread what you're doing within your organisation, both across a geography and into primary care and kind of other aspects of care as well. So I think that was something that we're always asking for, that little bit extra, and that's not a little bit extra, that's a super challenge. But I think that was something that the panel was particularly influenced by this year. It's taking what you're doing within your organisation outside, as well as demonstrating the change you can make within. Data is really important. I've been on the judging panel for 3 years. The panel's always been different apart from me, but there's always been at least one, possibly two people who are really into the data. So I'll guarantee if you can come up with some figures around what's happening to demonstrate impact and to demonstrate an evidence base behind what you're doing, so there's something that gives us the hard edge about the difference you're making, but also something that kind of makes that more rational, persuasive case, that can make a real difference. Matt's entry, which was highly commended, that was one of the reasons why that managed to kind of raise its head above the parapet in terms of the parity of the entries. There did a really good job around that. And again, Tina, part because I can see you, I'll give you a shout out as well. I thought your entry was particularly strong around bringing in patient safety as well. So we're looking for data, as we've always have done. We're looking for taking that a little bit further as well and demonstrating the impact on workers and patients as far as you can. It's a huge ask, I know, but some entries have managed to do that. The final point I've got down here is about, this isn't just about initiatives, but it's about sustainability as well. And I think this is something, again, where there needs to be a bit of a balance, and where I've seen the entries grow and develop over the last 3 years. And again, where we're upping the bar every year. I think every entry was able to say that, to demonstrate some great creative use of comms. And again, I'll give a shout out to London Ambulance Trust, because they came up with some really creative examples around that. But I think all entries were managing to say that they're doing the comms, they're engaging with staff. But what we're looking for increasingly is both creativity, but also sustainability. So something we were looking at this year, and which helped us come up with the decisions we did, and I think will continue to be there, is this idea of, we do need to see leaders behind this. We need to see brilliant guardians. We need to see the lives of people transformed through this. But we also want something to give us assurance that if you guys weren't there, would it still happen? And I think if you can do anything to both shine the spotlight on what you're doing, but also giving that extra assurance, it's in there, it's in the fabric of your organisation. It's not relying just on the brilliant individuals that you are or that particular leaders are, but it's kind of spread its network and it's properly embedded. That is something that we saw in some of the entries this year, and that will be particularly persuasive, I think. So just a couple of more slides. So Laura, can I have the next slide? And just a few things. John, please spare your blushes about, again, why Leeds Community Healthcare Trust just came that nose ahead of everybody else. And I say just that. It's really tough to do these entries. I know there's a lot of hard work in there, and some of these things are absolutely both difficult but hopefully rewarding as well. So what particularly came out from that entry was a senior leadership buy-in. You had, I think, John, your chief exec there makes a real difference, whether they're physically there, virtually there from a film, or there's somebody showing and demonstrating that I, as a leader, get this, and I know the difference it makes. And that's so important, because I'm afraid I know some guardians are struggling and doing a brilliant job in their organisations where they don't quite get that. So it's something we're particularly sensitive to. As I say, I think this year was all about how we're spreading further from individual organisations, and Leeds Community gave some excellent examples about how it's spreading within a geography, it's spreading across sectors. But the thing that added to that, I think, John, was a description of a journey. So it felt like there was some rationale there. It absolutely feels like the journey's not finished, but it felt like there was a sense of ambition and direction there, and something that you managed to do and your team managed to do, John, that was very persuasive to the panel that this is understood, it's not finished business, but there was assurance that it wasn't going to be left alone, and there was some sense of what the glorious heights of when this absolutely works will look like. So that really made a difference. And the other point I'll make, and this is where it's about really tough with these entries, you've only got so many words to say, and you've only got that horrible 10-minute experience. But if you can bring together some hard data plus something to show care, and that is both in terms of here's somebody who's spoken up, maybe struggled and made a difference, but anything that you as individuals, those who are in your supporting team, those in your leaders, can actually bring things back down to demonstrate that you've cared for people in your organisation. It's one of the things that I think has always managed to be in all the winning entries over the last 3 years. There is something about heart and soul here, and I know that sounds a little bit fluffy, particularly when I've said give us your data please, but if you can do that, then I think that really does the trick. Can I have the next slide please, Laura? And moving over to the highly commended entry, Northamptonshire Healthcare Trust, that was kind of data personified. I think there was lots of examples of where things like staff surveys, things like guardian Tina, I'll shout out to you. I think you took that one step further. I think you've got an excellent kind of patient safety evidence base there, and it'll be interesting to see where you can go. An example of senior buy-in as well.
Russell, I think your internet is causing some issues with your sound and picture.
Oh, I've just gone on mute. Where did I get to with that? Did you get the point about data?
I think you were just on that point, Russell, when you froze.
Right.
It looks like we've got you back at the moment. Yeah. Yeah,
for some reason it muted me as well. So do shout out, Sheena. Don't be shy. It's both my internet and, dare I say it, my organisation's IT systems.
I was just about to jump in and you came back, so I was just waiting for it to see if it buffered, but it seems to be okay now. So yeah, just at the data point, I think is where you were. Yeah.
Fabulous. Thank you. The next point was about senior buy-in as well. So the Northamptonshire example was again another one of those examples where we had leaders metaphorically in the room and being able to give us that assurance. And what I would say, and I hate to talk about weaker entries, but I think what will make the difference, and some of this is in your written evidence as well, is sometimes we hear a lot about what the Guardian does, and sometimes that can ring alarm bells because it feels like they're battling against their organisation rather than with it. So it's about getting that balance right. There were some brilliant case studies in this example, and again, I appreciate the challenge of being able to both move brains and hearts and spirits within the spirit of within the constraints of a 10-minute presentation. But if you can do that, videos help. Having somebody in the room, metaphorically, who's able to speak from their experience really does make a difference. And again, this entry was showing that stretch out towards some of the work they're doing with their STP. And I think that was particularly persuasive this year. And I think that will probably be a continuing theme as we move on to next year and beyond. So I think that's it. Laura, I think if there's a next slide, it probably says any questions. So I'm really happy to pause there. Sheena, if there's anything else you think I ought to pull out, let me know, but otherwise I'm happy to take questions.
Yep, so if you do have a question, please just unmute yourself and jump straight in.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, of course. Hi,
Thank you.
Tina.
Hi, Russell. Thank you so much. It was really great to hear that, and well done to everybody for all their fantastic work. It's just lovely to see the journey of freedom to speak up and how it's been recognised. Can I just ask, in terms of you've mentioned that it carried a lot of impact, having your chief executive there and having senior leaders there. But conversely, the way I'd interpret it was, surely this award is a bit more about what the Freedom to Speak Up team are doing as opposed to initiatives that the Trust have put on. Or are you meaning just more that this is to demonstrate that Freedom to Speak Up is so integral that you can add on initiatives that the Trust have done as well in your entry, just in terms of going forward?
Yeah, I think it's a balance, Tina. So I suppose what would and it's not just a balance about this. This is about, and I know you guys are kind of steep in this. This is about where we are with speaking up, and so this is why we use these entries. Not just about let's award this good stuff. Let's think about what the issues are in speaking up. So I'll talk about it in a slightly more negative way, and I think there is two aspects around that. I think there is a danger if the focus is entirely on the Guardian and the network that the Guardian's created, that we will be left with the impression what happens when that person goes. Again, that's kind of reflect what we see in reality as well. And I've seen that in kind of other initiatives as well in the health system, where you've got an organisation that really make great guns and then suddenly somebody kind of leaves. And I think in my experience, bringing on my own experience from the Cabinet Office and across government, I think that's something that in particular I'm sensitive to around when it comes to working for people with protected characteristics and vulnerable groups. I think we've seen that a lot. And the other point is, again, I'll exaggerate slightly, and absolutely this isn't about the entries we saw, but something we're sensitive to is, I think too much of a focus on just the Guardian gives the impression that in some cases, can I say, it feels either there's a bit of a battle going on, or there is something around this work isn't being recognised. And I know if Henrietta was on the call, she'd say it's all about leadership. So I'm exaggerating a little bit, Tina. It's absolutely about balance as much as anything else. But I think the best entries were able to demonstrate in whatever way and say, it's only 10 minutes. So there has to be some creativity around that, as the senior buy-in in there, but there's also something sustainable around that. So, and I think that's where the senior part kind of helped the entries this year.
I know I was so cross afterwards that I didn't point out that, you know, the Ned support we've got, you know, Mike Franklin and the journey, how he was against freedom to speak up when it started 4 years ago, and then became the champion of it, you know, because he was persuaded by the activity. But as you say, it's only 10 minutes and you think, oh, you know, if only I'd made that point at the time.
I know, and what I can say, Zoe, is if I'm on the judging panel, I'm the point of consistency, but as I say, the rest of the panel changes. So, so I'm trying to kind of build on this. But as I say, I'm not necessarily a data geek, but I'll guarantee there'll be somebody who's a data geek. It's bound to happen.
Right, do we have any other questions at all?
So where are we all from? So we've got Leeds. We're from South London. Corinne and I are from South London and Maudsley.
Yeah, I'm Jane Evans. Matt is now working in London, Matt Hasbury from Northamptonshire,
Hi.
the interim guardian for an HFT at the moment.
I'm from Salford Royal, but our patch covers the Northern Care Alliance, which includes Oldham, North Manchester, Bury, Rochdale as well.
Yeah, from all over.
Yeah, and I think as I say, Zoe, there's something about demonstrating that network. So I think you managed to get some reference to other trusts that you work with as well. So there is that area. I don't want to kind of get in the way of any entry, but I think there's that opportunity to demonstrate reaching out, working in partnership, easing other people who perhaps aren't quite on the right page along. That really makes a difference for us, I think.
Brilliant. So just some final words from me before I pass over to Russell, but just thank you very much for making the time today to join the session. We will be sending this out to all our entrants for this category and the lead presenters, hopefully by sort of in the next couple of days. But just so you're aware, we have launched HSJ 2021 yesterday. It was quite a tight turnaround because obviously having to push back the November event to earlier this month, we've sort of worked on launching it on time so we are able to deliver the event hopefully in person later this year in November. But pleased to say that, you know, National Guardian's Office are back on board as partners of this category, and we are taking entries from now up until June. So you've got plenty of time to have a little think about your, you know, either resubmitting or your the same project or a different project. But June is sort of the entry deadline, so have a little think about that as well. But I'll pass over to Russell now. Thank you.
Thanks, Sheena. And I suppose just a couple of points from me is, one is, please have another go. Please do this. Please encourage your friends, colleagues, partners to do so as well. And why do I do that? It's because the other point I'm going to make is we're not finished yet from this year. Our comms team will absolutely, if they've not already been in touch, they will be in touch with you. And I've spoken to them. Every entry had some gold dust in it. And what I'd like to do from this year is not only applaud the brilliant work that you're doing, but bring that out. I think this year for me, more than any other year, there are kind of subjects, there's elements, there is some role modeling in all of your organizations that I really, really want to shine a spotlight on. And why do I believe that? It's definitely not just about us in the office. It's the system needs this. Your leaders need role models. Your workers need role models. The people you work with who are struggling to speak up during COVID, and I absolutely appreciate that things aren't going to get back to normal, really need this. So I think I really want to, it's a very kind of glowing kind of metaphor, but I do want to shine a spotlight on that gold dust for you guys, but absolutely, because I genuinely believe that will make a difference to people. There is some stuff there that the system absolutely needs to adopt. So thank you so much.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks a lot for joining. Have a good day. Thanks, Russell.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye.
Stay safe. Stay fine.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.